Yo, what are the two main attributes to becoming a successful property developer? In this video, I'm going to talk about them in thorough detail. Stick around. So you want to be a developer, or you want to build houses, you want to convert properties, you want to do HMOs, you want to do something like that in this field, in this industry. There are only two things that you need to master, and one of them really is the crucial one. First one is finding sites. That is numero uno. If you can't find sites, then you just don't have a product. You don't have anything. You can have loads of money, but if you can't find sites and good sites, finding sites, of course you can go on Rightmove and just look at an ad, but finding sites is all about finding good business propositions, finding something that you can reposition a marketplace and make more money out of it, which is kind of like flipping a business in a way. It's not easy. It's not a straightforward thing to do, but it gets harder and harder as you climb the ladder of developments, because you could do a quick buy-to-let flip, or you could do a HMO or something like that, and it could be pretty straightforward. But if you're doing bigger sites, proper developments, then this part isn't as easy as just going on Rightmove or Savills auction or something and finding a piece of land and going, I'm going to build 100 houses and I'll make loads of money. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot that goes into finding sites. So you have to get good at finding sites. However, it can be delegated, so we'll explain that afterwards. But that's the first main thing. Numero uno, you have to be able to find sites. So number two is then also a treasure hunt. You need to be able to find money. A better way of saying that would be you need to be able to raise capital. That's it. That's all you have to do. You just have to find sites and find money. Those are the two main things. There's literally nothing else. You don't need to do the architecture. You don't need to do the construction. You don't need to do the letting. You don't need to do the surveys. You don't need to do the solicitor stuff. You don't need to do anything else. But you have to find sites and you have to find money. Otherwise, you're just not a developer. By definition, you're just not a developer. You have to find sites. You have to find money. So what does that then mean? Because obviously that's a bit too easy to say. Finding sites and finding money. Well, let's start with finding sites. So finding sites, we'll just go FS for this. So this is finding sites, can be split into quite a few different things. I know developers who don't go looking for their own sites. They'll only buy stuff with consented permission, so stuff that has planning already, or they'll use an agent, use a sourcing agent. A sourcing agent will do all that. So you could use a sourcing agent. It can be one way to do things, and that can obviously speed up the process. It's an established marketplace, and you can find properties quite quickly doing that. It's always going to cost you money, and you're never going to find the best sites doing it that way. You still find very good sites doing that, and it depends on your time and your appetite, and if you just want to be an investor, or if you want to be a developer. If you want to be a developer, then you have to get good at finding sites, and you can use sourcing agents to do that initially, but there's no right or wrong. Some people do that. They just use sourcing agents, and they do a really good job of it, and they find value add in the construction part, or in repositioning it on the back end, or how they then market the property and do it as SA instead of apartments and boost the yield up, or split it into cluster flats and do it as a hybrid HMO instead of apartments. There's so many things you could do, or forward funding it to an RP or social housing, and you could still take stuff from a sourcing agent and still add value. So it doesn't mean you can't do that, but I'd say you want to get good at finding the sites, get good at building rapport with agents, with landlords, with auctions, and know that you can find a parcel of land or a commercial property, reposition in a marketplace with a conversion or construction, or even just get planning gains on it. There can be many things you can do there, and there's a lot of knowledge that can be learned, valuable knowledge in the finding the sites bit. The other important thing about finding sites is that, generally speaking, all the money made in developments comes from finding the right site. It comes in the purchase. If you buy wrong, the deal will never stack. So you have to know how to buy right. So for anyone out there who only uses sourcing agents and wants to be a big developer, you're always going to be shackled to the floor. You'll never be a big developer. You have to learn how to find sites. But really, you want to find your niche. For us, that's conversions, it's HMOs, it's commercial to residential apartments. That's our niche. We stick there. You don't see us doing new builds. You don't see us doing planning gains. You don't see us doing social housing. We're not distracting ourselves. We're focused on our niche, and that inevitably will make us more money, because we get better and better and better and better and better at one specific product and strategy, and then eventually we can add that and adapt that to other domains. That's the best way to do things. To find your niche, you can use agents, but find your niche and just get good at finding sites. So I'll just keep stressing that. Get good at finding sites. Get good at appraising deals. So once you found your niche, get good at appraisals. There isn't anything else really when it comes to the finding the sites. You're either using an agent or you're going out and doing it yourself. So you want to find your market. What market are you going to be looking in? Is it regional market? Is it micro market within a certain street of London, or is it a certain town up in the northwest? Is it a large area where lots of people will buy just all around the country? And there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, it's an investment decision. But when you think about folding in and scaling a development business, if you're all around the country, well, there's loads of hours gone to travel anyway. So you're already shackling yourself to the floor with just time constraints. Not to mention getting to know local boroughs, local councillors, local politics. All these other things are going to help you. What's happening with the regeneration in certain areas. If you stick to a given area, again, it's that niche part of it. Niche may not just be a strategy, it may be an area. I think you should stick to an area, especially if you're starting out. Only go national if you're really scaling, and then you diversify purely for investment reasons. So you're diversifying because you may not trust a certain market of the UK. And once you're at scale, that can make a big difference. Let's say there's a 2-3% swing in house prices in a given region in the UK, and you own a lot of stock. That could be the difference of millions of pounds for you. So you'll see big funds and PLCs will diversify, go national, and it gives them a wider spread. And that is something you can do as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. But in the early days, stick to a niche, stick to an area, stick to a strategy, and don't deviate unless it's fundamentally flawed your strategy. But if you're trying and testing proven strategies like HMO conversions, apartment conversions, land and planning gains, or new build houses, then really it's not the location that's doing it, it's you and the way that you're tackling it. You're doing it wrong if it's not working for you, because those are tried and tested strategies. They work everywhere. So take a look at yourself. But anyway, sourcing, agent, niche, good appraisals. And the good appraisals part is looking at the business case. So you want to work from top backwards. What's the end value for what you can achieve? Well, what can you achieve out of the scheme for your given strategy? What's that end value? Work your way back through the construction costs, preliminary costs, financing costs, everything else, and you will find a nice number that you can buy it for. Usually it'll be sold for above that amount, so you're then trying to get it BMV, you're trying to get it below market value, and that can take a bit of doing, and then that can mean a whole load of offers that have to go out. So if you don't get good at the appraisal part, you can't get quick at it, and if you can't get quick at it, you can't offer on enough sites, and if you can't offer on enough sites, you'll never secure a site, and it'll take you many years. So all of this is very important. Do build rapport with sourcing agents, because they will genuinely bring you really good deals. A good one can save you a lot of time and hassle. If you're just gearing to move and you think you can add value in other areas other than just the acquisition, even if an agent gives you something, you still want to be running your own appraisal on it, because you don't just want to trust that they know their numbers.
Oh, it's going to be worth £2 million.
Yeah, sweet man, yeah, I'll buy that. You want to go and go, you think it's worth 2 mil? Cool, I think it's worth 1.6 mil, so I actually don't think your acquisition price is right, so fuck that deal. On to the next one. Oh, you think it's worth 2 million quid? Yeah, my numbers say it's worth 2 million quid. Buy it for 300 grand. Cool, it works. Buy it for 300 grand. That'd be a really good deal. So yeah, you want to get good at the appraisals regardless of what your acquisition strategy is, but hopefully there's a few nuggets on the finding the sites aspect. Then there's the raising the money, and this part is just more important. So finding money, we'll stick with that. The reason I say finding money rather than just raising money, because raising money is the right way to think about it, because you are raising capital from different areas. But sometimes it's not just raising. Sometimes you are finding money. You are trying to find it from somewhere. It's like going on an Easter egg hunt to find either equity capital, or you have a problem in the project and you need to find other money. You might need to borrow from friends and family to get it finished. But genuinely, you are raising money. So the first one is equity. If you can't raise equity, you'll never get a deal done. You certainly won't scale a development business. You have to be able to raise equity. And what does that mean? That means you have to be able to convince someone to part ways with the risk capital part of the capital stack in a project. The riskiest capital is the equity capital, because you generally, all your security comes second to everyone else, to the banks, to mezzanine finance, to second charges, everything else, because you're the owner. If you're the owner, you're taking on all the risk. So the equity capital is the risky part. So of course, trying to sell someone on that proposition to raise equity capital can be quite tricky, and it can take a while. And this is something we teach in our HMO Masterclass. You can check that out in the description below. Anyway, so raising equity capital is really, really important. It is the ignition to get any scheme done. You can kind of think of it like the seed round when starting a company. So the equity capital, most important thing, those are your investors who want to own assets, or they want to own an asset for an ephemeral period and then sell it and get the gain on the back end. So equity capital, most important part. You have to be able to raise the equity capital. The reason it's the most important is because the next bit you'll need, which might be the bridge or dev finance, there's an established marketplace to go out to with those things. And if you're good at your appraisals and you can produce a deck for the scheme and the development proposition and your background and your experience, then there's an established marketplace of commercial banks that you can go to for that money, as well as investors who will go for that money as well. If you offer them the right coupon or the right interest rate, then you may just get private individuals who will go, yeah, I'll give you 500 grand for that. Yeah, I'll give you 100 grand for that. Still want the first charge of security, but I'll give you the money because I'd rather make 12% than the 5% I'm getting in the savings account. But beyond that, failing that, if you don't know a wealthy individual, then there are loads and loads of commercial banks you can go to. But the deal has to stack, which then comes back to the equity. And the deal stacks, obviously, only if the deal makes profit. Generally speaking, commercial banks don't want to touch schemes that don't have profit in them. And I know that sounds silly. Why would you do a project without profit? Well, if you're up in the northern regions of the UK, sometimes your project costs can outweigh the GDV, but the yield is still very, very good because the capital values are so low. They're measly sums that are left stuck in the deal, a few hundred grand, but you're making 60, 70 on the rental income, then you're still getting very good returns. And you might not be too bothered about making a loss on the scheme scheme, well, that's the CapEx, or the total cost, or GDC, compared to the GDV, the gross development value of the scheme, because you don't mind it because you're going to make 20-30% returns on your money anyway, or 10-15% returns. But sometimes the bank won't want to touch schemes like that because there's no equity in them. So you then might need to put more equity in. So you might have to have more equity to cover that downside so that the bank stays at a minimum threshold on their LTGDV, loan to gross development value. They'll usually cap themselves at 65% net, so after costs. They are an established marketplace. So as long as a deal stacks, you should be able to get development finance, but it isn't that easy. You then need a valuer that agrees with your assumption on the end value. You need to make sure you've got enough equity capital if you do get downvalued, or if you struggle to access the day one money, then you might need more equity to put in, which is where sometimes people will then use mezzanine finance. We've done this a few times before. We'll call this mezz. That's mezzanine finance that you might layer and sandwich in between these two here to unlock the development finance. These guys are always going to take the first charge. You won't get a bank's money without first charge. They just will always take the first charge. Maybe there's exceptional circumstances. And then the mezz lender gets a second charge. They're taking on more risk than the bank in a way, but you'll pay them more of a premium for that money. And then you come last in the scheme because you own it and it's your risk. But that mezz finance can buffer the difference in there to make sure you can unlock that dev facility. There's also other reasons for mezzanine finance, other bits you can do. And then there's the back end, which is just the mortgage. That's just a long-term finance, and there's an established marketplace for that as well. And there is a whole load of things you need to think about there, but we're not too worried about that. The main thing we're looking at for raising finance and being a property developer is these first three here. Those are the first three. And this middle one, really, there's an established marketplace for. So you do need to be good at it. You do need to be good at speaking to banks, raising money, because you can get better terms. You can avoid and restrict PGs, which is what we can do now. We always restrict our PGs. We're never giving 100% personal guarantees to banks. We can give a reduced amount, generally about 25%, even down to 10-15%, and sometimes just none at all. So the more experience you get and the better rapport you build with banks, eventually you can do them without PGs and on better terms. Because you're experienced now, you might be a lower risk profile to that lender, therefore they might give you a slightly better rate. Oh, it might be a private lender. There's all kinds of things in here, but the main thing you need to be good at is this one, equity, and then mezz. The only reason I say mezz, because equity is the first one, that's the main thing. If you can't raise equity, you'll never be a developer, so you have to be able to do that. What are the channels for that? You know, friends, family, networking events, social media. This here, guaranteed an investor will watch this, and at some point it will aid in their buying decision to work with us. They just will, because I'm putting out content that's useful for people. If you elicit good energy and good content and show what you're doing and you're transparent about it, people will do business with you. They just will. But you have to go through the long legwork of doing that. I've been online creating videos now in the various businesses that I've ran for 12 years. So I've done a lot of this. So my name's gotten about and noise has gotten about. People know what I'm up to. But genuinely, it's taken about 5 years in the property space for me to get to this point where we now have investors coming to us in droves. But it took probably about 2-3 years to get that really working. But I wasn't focused on it that much at the start. So if you really focus on it, then online marketing is just number one, the best way to get good at raising money. Because if you're putting it out there in the ether, then that's a USP to loads of other developers who aren't doing that. And they only give you a cold brochure as an investor, and you're like, I've got to make a buying decision on hundreds of thousands of pounds based on a 10-pager, or can I watch 10 hours worth of content of this business and this guy and his family building this company? It's fully transparent. I understand the people. It's kind of like people that I know, and that helps people make buying decisions. So you have to get good at marketing. Get good at marketing if you really want to scale a development business. But that doesn't have to just be the online stuff. You can go to networking events, you can speak to wealthy people, go to London and get around the room. It just takes time. It takes time to do that, but you can get it done quite quickly if you're putting a lot of energy out there. And then joint venture with people as well. Joint ventures slightly easier to raise money for because there's an obvious win-win both sides and you're both sharing the risk. But yeah, you have to get the equity part sorted. If you can't raise equity, you'll never be a developer. And the reason raising mezz is really important, kind of similar really to finding your own private individuals for development finance, is that in an emergency situation, which will happen to you in property development, if you want to scale a property development business, you definitely at some point will need mezz or fixed rate finance. You'll need something to cushion the gap somewhere because you've got an issue or a problem. And don't be alarmed by it. It just happens quite a lot because we're in a fraught industry with lots of red tape and issues and time delays and subject to market dynamics, etc., etc. But because of those things, it creates a volatile market and there's lots of money to be made. If it's too predictable and straightforward and dead, it would just become placid like other industries. But property is dynamic. So if you've got good access to mezz and you can raise finance quickly and short-term finance as well, yes, you're going to pay a coupon for it, but as long as you got your bottom line sorted and you can afford the coupon, then you can always buffer the capital requirements for a scheme, get it to exit, get it to finish, wipe your hands with the scheme, it's done, pay back your mezz. You might tie up some equity for a while, but at least you got the scheme done and you're not finished as a developer. So it's important to be able to do that. And then ultimately, if you can raise that private privately for an individual rather than have to be reliant on a bank, then you'll get better terms as well. Your life will be a bit easier, slightly easier on the security. You can avoid PGs, so that's another thing. But on the back end mortgage, that's just straightforward stuff. But you need the equity there. You need to be good at raising short-term finance. And if you could do that at scale, then you have a war chest to then go and do the first thing, which is finding the sites. Paying for the sites that you found. So anyway, those are the two main things. You don't need to be an architect. You don't need to be this. You don't need to be that. However, they do help. They really help. So if you've got a given domain expertise that can complement your development business, then that's a very useful thing. But you don't need anything particularly to be a good developer. Like, I had no knowledge on property before I came to it, but I'm good at sales and marketing. I'm good at speaking with people, good at networking, and good at telling a story. And if you can do those things, you can pretty much grow any business. And a good critical thinker. I can think about things in the limit, think about things in their first principles, which is a very important methodology for building any kind of business or understanding a business or a service or a model. And you can see how it works and then quickly build a business around it, or raise the finance or do the sales, whatever it is. So if you've got good attributes just as a person, you'll be fine being a developer, even if you don't have the experience. And even if you deem yourself a bit of a moron, you can still be a good developer. I know plenty of morons who are developers, and you don't really need a given expertise to scale a development business. You do, but to just be a developer, because you just need to get good at finding sites and raising money, you just need to be good at speaking to people. You need to work hard. So you do need these given attributes as a person. You need a good risk profile as well, but you don't necessarily have to have, you don't need to be like super fucking skilled financial broker or financial analyst or whatever it is. And I know a lot of people think that way. They think of these developers as these really smart, switched on financial gurus that like swath loads of cash and they're really rich and shit, but that is just not the case. Most developers that I know who are successful are quite quaint people. People have that stereotype of a developer being that very London-esque finance guy, like, yeah man, yeah, raising money, doing this, doing that. But that just isn't the case. Most of them are quite measured people because they've been through the ring of fire many, many times and are humble enough now to understand how property development works. And that ultimately is where you end up getting to along the road of being a property developer. When you start out, you just need the basic attributes. Just work hard, have a good risk profile, be ambitious, bit of creativity, and know your shit, and keep endeavoring to learn more. But it does help if you are, say, an existing quantity surveyor, or you have a lot of construction experience or architectural experience or financial experience, or you're really good at sales. Those kind of things will all help in the raising capital part or in the construction part where the most risk is, or in other bits and bobs. They can all sort of help you. But don't be too worried about your existing qualifications, because they just don't matter in property development. You just need to be able to raise money and find sites. As long as you do those two things, everything else is delegated. You pay an architect for that work, you pay solicitors for that work, you pay someone else, you pay someone else. You're the CEO of your limited company, and your limited company is that property for that given development, and then you have multiple developments. And then you start to incorporate and create management teams that then delegate down to those other sort of subsidiary professionals that you use within those projects, and then you start having a development group and a development business, which is what we've built, where you then have middle management that manage the given domain tasks, and they should all be better than you at those tasks, but you're the guy that can raise the money and find the sites. Anyway, that's this video. Hope that's helped spread a little bit of light on what it means to be a developer and the two main attributes you need. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Big love. Drop me a comment for anything else you want me to talk about. I'm here all day. Subscribe. Peace.